Okay, we're going to start studying the governments of Southeast Asia, but before we do so, there's a couple of things that we need to look at. The first thing I need you to know is that Asia has a wide variety of government types. Um, Runs from everything from communist to constitutional monarchies and even federal democracies. The countries that we will be studying in particular this time are China, India, and Japan. Um, each one of these, the China, the India, and Japan, falls into one of the categories that I underlined above: communist, federal democracy, and constitutional monarchy. Anybody know ahead of time which category that China falls into? India, Japan. If you said China communist, Japan constitutional monarchy, and India federal democracy, good job, because you are absolutely correct. Okay, here we go. Power distribution or distribution of power. You saw it in the Middle East. You saw it in Africa. And here you go again, Southeast Asia. These words are not going to go away. You might as well learn them if you haven't done so already. All right, unitary. Power is in the hands of the central government. The central government does not like to share the power. It does not share the power. It does not. If there are states, it does not share the power with the states. It holds all the power. Examples of unitary distribution in Asia, the ones that we're going to be studying: Japan and China. Confederation. Local governments hold the power and share it with the central government. Totally opposite of unitary. Local governments have the power, they share it with the central government. Uh, Federal, that is when the central government and the state share power. An example would be here in the United States, our government our shares power with the state governments, as you well know. And an example of a federal power distribution that we're going to be studying is India. Citizen participation. I told you these words aren't going to go away. First one is autocratic. Just a quick review. Citizens have little control over the government. Power is in the hands of one person. And really, citizen participation is how people vote. Are people allowed to vote? In an autocratic society, you're going to get very few people voting, if at all, because already, like I said, the power is in the hands of one person. They don't need anybody to vote. All right, oligarchy is when a small group of people control the government. Um, an example of that we've already had would be Iran. And China would be the example for oligarchy citizen participation that we're going to be looking at in Southeast Asia. Democratic, of course, this is the one we're most familiar with. Citizens have the ability to participate by voting in their or for their government officials or leaders. India and Japan would be our examples of democratic. So, as a quick review, uh, power distribution, unitary would be China and what other country? Did you say Japan? Good for you. And federal would be India. Back to citizen participation. We don't have any country that we're going to be looking at in particular, or that we're going to be looking at rather, is autocratic. Oligarchic would be China. Democratic would be India and Japan. All right, type of government for India, which is the first country we're going to look at as far as their government, is a federal republic. Sounds very familiar to you because that's what the United States is, a federal republic. So there is some sharing of power between the central government and the local governments or states. All right, the executive branch. The chief of state, of course, is the president. They call their chief of state president. He's chosen by members of parliament. Now, usually in the past, we have seen that most chief of states are ceremonial. And while this chief of state for India is ceremonial as well, he or she holds a little bit more power because they're able to make governmental decisions and make governmental appointments. So they're a little bit more powerful than the typical president that you looked at in the past if they were associated with chief of state. So let me say this one more time. The chief of state for India is called president. He or she is chosen by members of parliament and have more power than you're typically used to seeing in a chief of state president. Again, he or she is allowed to make governmental decisions and make many governmental appointments. So really important. 3 check marks for that one. All right, head of government is the prime minister. Okay, so head of government is the prime minister. Now, he's appointed a little bit differently. Normally, it's the largest party in parliament that appoints the prime minister, but India does it a little differently. So you got to pay attention to this one. All right, the prime minister is appointed by the president from the lower house of parliament unless there's no clear majority. So the president appoints the prime minister from the lower house of parliament that has the largest party. If they have no majority party in the lower house, then the president is able to choose from the upper or lower house. But the key is he gets to appoint. He has to choose someone that he or she thinks is capable of forming a stable government. If the president decides that nobody in the upper house or the lower house is capable of forming a stable government, he or she, the president being he or she, can step outside of the government and choose somebody outside of the government to become the prime minister. So, the president can choose someone not a member of the parliament, but that person must become a member of the parliament within 6 months. So the only stipulation is if the president cannot find somebody in the lower house, if the president cannot find somebody in the upper house, then he or she can go back and look outside of the government for a potential prime minister. If he or she finds one, then that person must become a member of parliament within 6 months or lose the position of prime minister. A little complicated there, but it's also very interesting. It's not like our government at all. All right, let's look at the legislative branch. It's bicameral. It's called a Sansad. I don't think I pronounced that correctly, but please forgive me. The upper house is elected by members of the state and territorial assemblies. The lower house is elected by popular vote. Okay? So we have the upper house being elected by members of the state and territorial assemblies. The lower house is elected by popular vote, which would be you, me, etc. Their judicial branch, they have a Supreme Court, very much like ours. Their universal suffrage age is 18, and they also enjoy many of the same freedoms that we do. They enjoy the freedom of speech, religion, movement, etc. That concludes the presentation for